guys think I should place these units and where you would place them. Don't forget, like, subscribe, check out all my other Legion content, tier list gameplay, and a lot of the campaigns as well. We're almost done with the Desert Ridge. So let's get started. We all know Brute is S tier. I mean, for the value you get from this guy, and honestly, they keep buffing him, so it is insane how good a 60 Mythium Mercenary is. Brute is definitely super strong, especially early game. I think he's, as far as value, arguably the best, if not one of the best mercenaries in the entire game, for sure. Four Eyes as well, I will give S tier. Obviously, he is much more expensive, but against overall any build, he's very good, but especially against high health units, that is who you want to throw out. Really rip into those tanks up front to get to that back line, or even throw a couple out and make it even worse for them for sure. I do have to put Centaur up in S2. I think he is just honestly super good again against a whole lot of builds. He has a lot of health, he does a lot of damage, and the fact that he can hit multiple units. So if you have a lot of spam type units you're sending into, like Gate Guards or Dread Knight, or even just a lot of frontline units overall, he's definitely the man to cut him down and rip through him and help you out. I will have to give Ghost Knight A. I think he's super underrated. I think he's just kind of a lot of his close Mythium friends, such as Ogre and everything, I think just kind of outshine him, even though Ghost Knight is super, super good. I think, again, he's super underrated. You should definitely throw a couple out there, see him work. But I think he's worth it. I think he's very good. I just can't really give him the S tier. I think a lot of it is more of just kind of his ability, if you will. Not so much his damage. And the cost, again, kind of makes you want to use Ogres and other people instead of him. But Ogre I have to give to A tier as well. I think the amount of damage output this guy can do is pretty insane. He doesn't have as much health as Ghost Knight, but for a 200 Mythium, he's definitely worth the price, and he's definitely going to cut some people down for sure. I will have to give Snail just C. I think Snail, Lizard, and Dragon Turtle are all just kind of, because of the Mythium amount for early game is only when they're very viable. Even when you do the Legion spell after 10, as far as like the Lizard army, it's not super worth it. It's nice to have that extra, I guess, Mythium out there for free, but overall, snails, unless you have giant snail spell, which again necessarily isn't the best, really you're just gonna use them early game and then they fall off. But that's what low Mythium is, obviously. But even late game, if you have 60 extra Mythium to send, you're not going to send 3 snails or 1 and 1. You're going to send a Brute probably, or even a Fiend, which I will give Fiend. I just got to keep him in B, honestly. Because of the amount he is, you're just going to usually use Brute. Unless you need a little bit of extra income, you'll click Fiend. Now, Fiend isn't bad by any means. He's a solid 60 Mythium Mercenary, and he has more health actually than the Brute, but he just has no ability that the Brute has. The Brute, whoever he's attacking, lessens their attack speed, so you can really get in there and kill people quick. But Fiend is not bad. He's just, again, outshined by a lot of other units or people instead of the 60. Hermit, I also have to send to S. I think the amount of healing he can do. Now, damage obviously isn't necessarily there from him, but that's not his purpose. His purpose is to heal all of your other units, and definitely on certain waves and or certain sins, he is the man. He is easily worth 80 Mythium for sure. I think he's a very strong pick pretty much all the time, no matter what else you're sending. I wouldn't send more than one. There's not really a point, with Four Eyes or centaurs or brutes or a lot, pretty much every unit. Sending more than one is not a bad thing. It definitely helps you, but more than one hermit just really isn't worth it. You will obviously get more healing, but usually, even with safety mole here, which I'll also put into S, it doesn't really bump up that much. The worth isn't there to send more than one. Now, safety mole is super solid against AoE builds, which there is definitely a lot of, especially if you're playing even just classic sending to a dual building team. Safety mole is huge, honestly, against that. But safety mole is very good, being able to essentially just give damage reduction to everybody he's around, which is the entire wave. And he's not one of those mercenaries that's targeted early. Usually, mercenaries that are targeted early are snail, dragon, turtle, sometimes brute, depending on where he splits and where he goes. And fiend is a pretty solid, quick hitting or being attacked first mercenary. But safety mole is not. And he's very much worth the 120 Mythium. I like him. If I'm spending 120 Mythium and I have to spend it on either him or Drake, it's definitely him. Drake's, honestly, I gotta give to B. Obviously, Mythium to income-wise, they are technically the best in the game. But aside from that, not to me, it's not the best unit. I'm spending, again, my Mythium differently if I have a choice. Drakes aren't bad. You can definitely do well with them. You do have to watch for serpents when you're sending lizards, drakes, hermits, four eyes cannons, all these backline units, but overall, most people aren't really going to have them. They're my favorite, so when I'm being sent, just income send drakes, I'm building deep coilers and ripping them apart for sure. But drakes, again, not bad. Good choice, but to me, if you're not super worried about getting the best income mercenary out there, send something else. Cannons, I'll give Cannon an A, sorry. I think she's very much worth it. I think she does a lot of damage for her value. And I think she definitely outshines the Imps as far as the 100 Mythium cost mercenary. But yeah, I don't really have anything bad to say about her. I think really her only downside and why she's not an S is just her health. But I think if you put a lot more health on her, she's going to be pretty OP. Because honestly, she still to this day surprises me with how much damage output she does for 100 cost. Backline. I feel like her impact somehow is more than a Drake. I'm sure if you put both of them out there, the Drake will actually do more. But as far as what seems to feel like more and be more is Cannon. Let's see here. Kraken, honestly, I don't think I can put into S. I think, again, even though it's the highest cost mercenary in the game, and while, don't get me wrong, it is very, very good, you're just more than likely going to send other things. Kraken is definitely much more of a huge tank. It does do a very good amount of damage, but more often than not, you're going to send, a shaman, you're going to send pack leaders, ogres, hermits, safety mole, four eyes, centaur. You're going to send a lot of other things and not necessarily spam krakens, but kraken is definitely good. So, next up we'll do Shaman. Shaman I have to give to A. The biggest reason why he is not an S is because I feel like he is only viable or gets his Mythium worth on certain waves or with certain sends. If you're just sending him It very much depends on the waves, you know, if you're doing it on 15 or 20 or even 10 maybe. Um, that's when he's worth it to me as far as just the waves as boss waves. But if not, if you're sending on any other wave that's not a boss wave, I feel like he's definitely much more worth it if you have a backline unit, if you have a Four Eyes, if you have, you know, a Centaur up there, he'll buff them, or an Ogre or something. So that's why I have to keep him an A. I think he is very good mercenary. I personally don't use him a whole lot, mostly because that reason. It's either, you know, you have to send on a certain wave for him to feel very viable, or with certain sends, and that's not always available to do. But nonetheless, very good mercenary choice. Witches, I honestly have to put in B. I think the only way witches are viable is if you witch spam and have 4 or more of them, essentially, because the witches aren't going to do that much damage. All they're going to do is keep spawning the frogs, which, again, don't do that much damage, but so long as the wave takes long enough and they're not being targeted, you know, by serpents, or even by, you know, AoE bounces or something, or rapid fire cannons, then, you know, you can really excel, especially on waves like 21. Is usually one of the only times you really see witches come out. But other than that, it's not a bad unit. But again, as far as 200 Mythium, I would feel much more comfortable on 90% of the waves to send an Ogre, or split up Mythium between some of these other choices. Siege Ram, I have to put in B. Again, I think the Mythium cost, you're going to choose other things unless it's a certain wave, or you're pushing against a certain build. Don't get me wrong, Siege Ram is definitely one of the best tank mercenaries in the game. Technically, it's the second best compared to Kraken. It's definitely worth it. It's not going to do an insane amount of damage, but it is going to tank for you for at least a little bit. But again, I think depending on who you're sending, it's very unversatile. We'll just say that. You know, a Hermit send is good on any wave, no matter what. Same with, you know, a Centaur or Four Eyes or something. Compared to Siege Ram, certain waves might not be the best to send. Other waves, it might be fantastic. But again, it's based on waves and, you know, builds, so it's a little inconsistent in that retrospect. Pack leader, I'll give to A. I don't feel like, I've always felt like he's not as good as he is supposed to be. Mythium cost is nice. It's definitely a good in-between send. Virtually on most waves except backlines, you know, like 11 or 15 or something, unless you're sending a shit ton of stuff with him. But definitely a fantastic aura unit. Nothing really bad to say about him, minus just the... I've never felt like, you know, okay, I'm sending a pack leader, I can feel or see the difference compared to other sends, but I know that he is good. I know he definitely buffs, obviously the entire wave, but, you know, pick and choose the waves for sure for him. Mimic, the other 160 Mythium Mimic, I'll give him to A as well. Mostly what got him there was just the possibility of his ability working. So if Mimic gets a kill, you get some gold. Not that it's a lot at all, but Mimics are pretty good. High amount of damage, worth the 160 cost, and just the possibility of a little bit of gold for getting a kill is nice. Again, I just think Mimics are they are inconsistent, but again, it's you're going to probably choose other things to send other than a Mimic, especially depending on the wave. But value-wise and what can happen, Mimics are definitely a fantastic choice. A lot of health, a lot of damage, and the possibility of some gold, so nothing bad. Dinos, I'm going to give it a B. I think dinos are very, very good, but they are only good early to mid game as far as what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to be just these meat shield tanks, not a whole lot of damage, but early game, decently hard to kill or deal with. And they are definitely one of the only earlier game tanks until you get to, some later ones. So they're definitely a good choice, nothing bad, but you're going to replace them. We'll go with that. And there are definitely some mercenaries that are not on the list. This is an old tier list available. They don't have it updated at all or any of the new ones. So definitely some missing units here. But let me know down in the comments where you guys would place all of your favorite and least favorite Legion TD2 mercenaries. Don't forget, like, subscribe, check out all my other Legion TD2 content, and we will see you in the next one.